Now on Eye on Northwest Politics, 30 days. That's all that remains until voters decide the next Oregon governor. This comes at a critical time as Oregon faces record gun violence and a persistent homeless crisis. It's also an historic race, as for the first time in American history, 3 women are gubernatorial nominees. Over the next 3 weeks, I sit down with each candidate, Democrat Tina Kotek, unaffiliated candidate Betsy Johnson, and Republican Christine Drazen. This week, the Democratic candidate and the former Oregon House Speaker, Tina Kotek. Eye on Northwest Politics starts now. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of Eye on Northwest Politics. I'm Ken Boddy. Democrat Tina Kotek was Oregon's longest-serving Speaker of the Oregon House, serving 9 years from 2013 to earlier this year, when she left that leadership position to concentrate on a race for governor. Now she finds herself in a tight race with Republican Christine Drazen and former Democrat and now unaffiliated candidate Betsy Johnson. Johnson is behind in the current polls, but still a formidable presence. This is the most recent poll from DHM Research. It was commissioned by the Oregonian newspaper. A Republican hasn't been Oregon governor since Vic Atiyeh back in the 1980s. A resident of North Portland, Tina Kotek is here as we begin 3 weeks of interviews with the gubernatorial candidates. Tina Kotek, thanks for joining us on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Good to see you, Ken.
Well, your advantage is being a Democrat in a state where Democrats control the legislature. Your disadvantage is being in a state where Democrats control the legislature, and voters aren't really happy with the direction that Oregon is going. Governor Brown, among the least popular governors in America. Why should voters believe that electing a Democrat again could get Oregon back on the right track?
Well, voters are angry. I'm angry. I live in Oregon. I want things to work better. That's why I'm running for governor. I'm a problem solver. I want to make sure we can make government work better, that people can have what they need. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us. What we do know is there's going to be a new governor, and all 3 of us, all 3 leading candidates, are well funded. We've all been leaders in the legislature. The choice before Oregon voters this year is who is in line with their values, who has the skills and the track record to show that they can do the job. And that's the case I'm making to Oregon voters in this election.
Let's talk about one of the big issues that is really hitting Oregonians hard right now, our homeless crisis. It's really affecting neighborhoods and communities. How do we get a handle on our homeless and affordable housing crisis?
Yeah, it is a top of mind issue wherever I go around the state. And not only is it unconscionable that our neighbors are living on the street. If you're living next to someone who's living on the street, you're also impacted. We are all impacted by our homelessness crisis. And on day one, for me, it means bringing a new urgency to helping people who are living on the street right now. That means increasing the number of outreach teams who are working with people who are living in tents, helping them get connected to services, getting them into shelter, and getting them into permanent housing. I believe we can do this. It's going to take urgency and focus. You know, one of the things that I worked on when I was speaker and still believe is one of the solutions is converting motels into transitional shelters. You can't go from a tent to an apartment. A shelter like a converted motel provides security and stability and access to services for Oregonians who need them. And my opponents oppose the idea of converting motels. I think it's one of the solutions we need to actually do more of, and that's what I would want to focus on as governor.
We have so many people living on the street right now. Do we have enough in terms of resources, especially at the state level, to deal with the number of people that we have on the street?
I have never seen more resources in the system, whether at the state or local level. I'm not saying we don't need more, but what we need to make sure is that the resources we have are serving the individuals who need them, particularly our mental health and addiction services. If you've been living on the street, you probably have a mental illness and an addiction issue. We need to make sure services are there for people who need it. There is money there, and I am frustrated that our current governor hasn't been able to make sure those dollars through Measure 110 have actually helped people. That's going to change when I'm governor, because we have to make sure people have the services they need to get healthier and off the streets.
Let's talk about Measure 110. That decriminalized drugs, most drugs, and put that money into treatment programs. But that hasn't been working. It's taken a long time to roll out. Why is that the case, and why can't we get this moving?
Well, I want to stay true to what voters asked for. Voters said, let's take marijuana revenue, put it more into treatment. It's not happening. The Oregon Health Authority under Governor Brown's leadership has moved too slowly. They have not gotten the money out to the providers who need it. And people have been dying, and we have to do a better job. We also have a workforce issue, making sure people who can do the work with folks who are recovering from addiction are there for them. And so we have multiple challenges, but I think if you dig into the details and stay focused, we have the resources, we have to make sure people get the care they need. And what I hear from my opponents is we should just, return the whole thing back to the voters. What voters have said is make Measure 110 work. And as governor, I'm not going to leave anyone behind. We're going to make it work. And I believe that we have to give tools to law enforcement that when someone is using drugs, that there is a stronger connection to services than we're currently doing. Because I don't think that's working well.
In Portland, deaths from gun violence are at last year's record pace. This summer, 2 people at a supermarket in Bend were killed by a gunman who then took his own life. And that leads to our first viewer question. This is from Kimberly in Eugene. What do you think is a reasonable solution to gun violence? There it is right there. That's from Kimberly in Eugene.
Well, first of all, standing up to the gun lobby and saying we should have common sense gun legislation and gun regulation here in Oregon. And as Speaker of the House, I supported background checks for firearm purchases. I supported a red flag law that said if you have a gun but you're in danger to yourself or others, it can be temporarily removed. I also supported safe storage laws that says you can't bring a gun into a school building. Those are really basic things, and both of my opponents have A+ ratings with the NRA. They are not interested in doing more here. Look, responsible gun owners know that we can be safer, and we have to get illegal guns off the street. People are dying from increased gun violence in Portland and other places in the state because we're not willing to stand up to the gun lobby.
And you're a gun owner yourself, correct?
I am not a gun owner.
You are not a gun owner yourself. Okay. Let's talk about crime. Are you in favor of funding more police officers to deal with rising crime and vandalism?
I support making sure we have the police officers we need to respond to crime. And I think we all know when someone has a gun, we want someone to show up who has a gun. And that is a trained police officer. When someone's in a mental health crisis, we need things like Portland Street Response here in Portland. In the legislature, I supported for the first time grants to local communities to have more mental health crisis response, more counselors who can go out when a person is not hurting anyone, but they're in a crisis. So if a police officer doesn't have to respond to that, they can respond to, more serious violent crime. That is the type of response I want. And as governor, making sure the classes at the state level that certify police officers, we have more of them, we can get more people into the field, because right now we do have a shortage of officers and we have to get more people on the streets.
We had several viewers submit questions on the urban-rural divide in Oregon, and here's one from Mark in Dallas. How will you address the needs of rural Oregon? This is from Mark in Dallas.
It's such an important question. It is important for me to be a governor for the entire state, making sure that every part of our state can be successful. And the way you go about doing that is making sure all voices are part of the conversation, whether that's in Salem, as part of an advisory committee, or as governor, spending more time out in communities across the state, listening to Oregonians about the solutions they have and working with them. In our rural communities, they are so impacted, for example, by climate change right now, droughts and wildfires. As a governor, both helping our communities be more resilient to those changes in weather and climate, but also doing our part to fight climate change. What I'm seeing from my opponents is they don't have a plan. They say they believe in climate change, but they have no action to deal with that. And that, I think, is what is going to hurt our rural communities a lot, because we have to make sure it doesn't get any worse. At
the state level, what can we do about climate change?
Well, we have to make sure that we help people get into cleaner vehicles. And I'm not just talking about, this is about the metro area and people who live up and down the I-5 corridor. I want to help people make that choice the next time they buy their next car, that it's a cleaner vehicle, an electric car, a hybrid car, something that is going to help reduce our transportation emissions. We do have to make sure that we work over the next decade. This isn't going to happen overnight, but moving away from fossil gas, moving into cleaner homes and businesses based on electricity. And I helped pass a comprehensive law last year to move us to 100% clean electricity by 2040. That means more solar, more wind, more offshore wind, things that will bring more renewable energy and a clean energy future for our state. And that, along with that, good jobs for Oregonians in rural, urban, and suburban areas to build that clean energy future together.
How deep do you think the urban-rural divide in Oregon is? A lot of people say that the governor of Oregon acts as the governor of Portland. Uh, how deep is this divide?
I think our country and our state are divided. I don't think it's just urban rural. I think it's neighborhoods and neighborhood, right? People, because of the pandemic, aren't really communicating with each other. We're not seeing each other in person the way we used to. We have to get back to being one state where we take care of each other. And I just want to be honest with people. There's no easy answer here. It's going to take dialogue, engagement. It's going to require me as governor to spend a lot less time in Salem and spend more time out in the state listening, doing a lot of listening and making sure people feel heard, because that, I think, is how you break down that divide.
We'll have more of our conversation with gubernatorial candidate Tina Kotek right after this break.